All right, good morning, everybody. Here for another episode of Pick and Pop, actually the 25th. And today we'll be talking about the NBA action of Monday night. There were two playoff games. One outcome that really wasn't all that surprising, and one that I think was a little bit surprising and certainly impacts the series quite strongly, as we now have two 3-games-to-1 series leads out of those series that went on last night. The first of those two games was between the Houston Rockets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Minnesota coming off of a 16-point victory in Game 3 where they had everything going. Finally were able to get Karl Anthony Towns to get going in that game. Had three 20-point games stemming from Jeff Teague, Jimmy Butler, and Andrew Wiggins, looking for similar contributions in this game. And through the first half, it looked like that was the case. They were tied after the first quarter. They were down by one after the second. So, you're going into the half and Minnesota's only trailing by one. And then the Houston Rockets laid an absolute haymaker. And I really don't think that fully does it justice, because they scored 50 points in the third quarter, something that you really rarely see happen in any game, let alone a playoff game. The Minnesota Timberwolves, on the other hand, were outscored by 30. They only had 20 in the quarter. And while the Timberwolves outscored Houston by 12 in the final frame, they lost by 19. And Houston has a 3-games-to-1 lead to carry back home to Houston, where they are expected to likely finish off this series. But James Harden really got going in the second half of this game at 36 points to go 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 steals, and a block. Chris Paul had 5 steals in the win with 25.6 rebounds and 6 assists. Clint Capella with 14 and 17. Eric Gordon had 4 threes and 18 points off the bench. For Minnesota, Karl Anthony Towns had his best game of the series, 22 points, 15 rebounds, and 2 helpers, but they did not get any help from anybody else. Andrew Wiggins with just 14 and Jimmy Butler with 19, 9, and 5. Jeff Teague, 2 points, 1 of 7 shooting in 28 minutes. So really rough game for Jeff Teague. Taj Gibson was a non-factor. Derrick Rose, another very good game off the bench. He had 17 to go with 6 boards and 4 assists, 7 of 11 from the field, hit a couple of threes. Jamal Crawford had 10 off the bench. And I was really encouraged watching the first half of this game and seeing how Minnesota was really able to hang in there. But I think that was just a moment, whether it was Mike D'Antoni, whether it was somebody in that locker room, I think it may have been like, hey, we are the best team in the National Basketball Association. We're a 1 seed in the playoffs. We should not be in a position to have the series be tied going into Game 5. In fact, I'm sure a lot of them believe that there shouldn't even be a Game 5. So they just really did what the Houston Rockets have been capable of doing all season. I mean, this is a team that earlier this year scored 90 points in a half against the Phoenix Suns. And granted, that's the Phoenix Suns, but I mean, this is a playoff team, and they scored 50 in a quarter, and that really wrapped up the game and likely the series. I mean, just an absolutely demoralizing blow to take at home in a playoff game after really carrying the momentum for those first 6 quarters that they played at home, and then just really not having any response for what the Rockets are capable of, and especially looking at what James Harden is capable of, the likely MVP in the league, and showing why he is that in the third quarter of last night's game. And from that point on, it was just closing it out. But really an incredible performance by the Houston Rockets, just very impressive, reminding everybody about the kind of team that they are and what they're poised to do. And, one more win and they will secure themselves a spot in the conference semifinals, the stage of the playoffs that they were eliminated in last season to the San Antonio Spurs. So certainly we'll be looking to avenge that loss in the second round. The other game that went on last night was the one that certainly had a surprising outcome between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Utah Jazz. And while the Jazz were the favorites in the game, I expected Oklahoma City to win. I feel like a lot of people did. And even if they weren't going to win, I feel like it was just a general expectation that the Thunder would be ready to play. And outside of the first quarter, that just simply wasn't the case. They were thoroughly outplayed in the second and third quarters specifically, and nobody was able to get going for this team. And I mean, you assemble this big three, and granted, I know such a big part of it is how good Utah is defensively. They have been an elite defensive team all season, especially after the trade deadline. And while I mean, for example, while a guy like Jay Crowder hasn't really given you much offensively so far, he's been an outstanding defender for this team and has been a difference maker on that end, coming off the bench, who can occasionally hit shots. But I mean, this team has been so strong defensively all year, and Oklahoma City has too. But the problem is that when you don't have Andre Robertson, you're in a playoff series. It really limits your ability to stop these runs that they have been able to stop when he was on the floor in the first half of the regular season and in years past in the postseason. So it does certainly provide a real problem for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And yesterday, nobody was able to get going. Paul George had 32 points, but that was partly thanks to him going to the free throw line 12 times. He was 9 of 21 from the field, 2 of 9 from 3-point range. Carmelo Anthony had just an awful performance yesterday, really not trying to mince words. 5 of 18 from the field, 0 for 6 from 3 with 11 points. And like that to me is the craziest thing, is that like when this team was assembled, there were questions about how Houston was going to fit offensively together. And even though Oklahoma City struggled for most of the season, obviously Houston answered their doubts essentially right away as soon as they were able to get CP3 and James Harden on the floor at the same time. I think that even throughout the season, as Oklahoma City had this up and down, kind of landscape to their year, I was kind of thinking that once the playoffs would come around, these are three guys that have all been the number one option on a playoff team multiple times. And have been parts of deep runs. Each of these three guys has taken their team to a conference final as the number one option. And while it's been a long time for Carmelo Anthony, he does have a pretty good amount of playoff experience from early on in his career with the Nuggets, and then even the 3 years that he was able to get in with the Knicks. Obviously, Russell Westbrook has been to the finals. I should correct that statement. I said that Westbrook took them to the conference finals as the number one option. That just didn't happen. But he did go to the NBA finals as part of a extremely dynamic duo with Kevin Durant and made several runs to the conference finals. So I think the point certainly remains there that Russell Westbrook has plenty of playoff experience and also has experience of being a number one option on a team. And then Paul George had taken his Indiana Pacers to the conference finals twice, with him being the leader on that team. So I just thought that with all of that leadership, that they would not only be able to perform really well themselves on both ends of the floor, which has really kind of been the disappointing part. I've expected a lot more defensively out of both Russell Westbrook and Paul George. Carmelo Anthony's been a pretty good post defender this year, but he really hasn't been that effective in that sense in this series. But, when you look at how things have been happening, while they were able to limit Ricky Rubio, at least scoring-wise, a bit more yesterday, you let Donovan Mitchell go off for 33, and Joe Ingles still getting a lot of good looks and was 5 of 11 from 3. So they're really not limiting the strengths of this Utah Jazz team. And when you're in a playoff series, especially at this point, to where going into this game, you had already lost twice, once at home. I mean, it's just one of those that it kind of boggles your mind that they didn't put on a better performance, for lack of a better word, last night. I mean, you lose by 17 in a game that was a must-win game, and I understand it's on the road in a very hostile environment, a tough place to play. But that's the environment that the Thunder play in when they're at home for the teams to visit them, and Utah was able to take a game there at game 2, and now Oklahoma City is actually in a must-win position, and I don't anticipate them coming back from this deficit. I don't think it's out of line to think that they can win game 5 at home and bring it to a game 6, but this Utah team has everything going for them right now. They're so well coached. I know I've talked about that, and I don't mean to beat the dead horse a little bit more on that. But, I mean, this is a team that really has a very strong rotation, a really good starting lineup. I mean, their starting 5, I think, is a lot better than what many give it credit for. I mean, a backcourt of Ricky Rubio and Donovan Mitchell, strong defensively, and one of them is just a shot taker. And as we've learned as the year has gone on, a shot maker, as he was last night, 13 field goals on 28 shots. And then Ricky Rubio, who's just very strong defensively and one of the elite passers. And then, of course, your front court defensively, very strong at Rudy Gobert and Derek Favors. And then Joe Ingles is an elite three-point shooter. So they're really, you kind of cover all the bases with that team. And while offense has never been their strong suit, they're more than capable of putting it up. They're a very fun team to watch, looking to make it their second year in a row that they make it to the conference semifinals, and they are certainly in a good position to do so. I definitely expected more from the Thunder last night, and I feel like I'm probably not the only one holding that sentiment. But other than that, we got 3 playoff games tonight, 3 game 5s, 2 of which are elimination games. So the Bucks and the Celtics, they'll be the first ones to play, unfortunately, on NBA TV, so I won't be able to watch my team in a pivotal game 5. But besides the point, the Boston Celtics will be looking to take a 3-2 lead as they head back home after dropping 2 in Milwaukee, the latter of which featured them coming back from a 20-point deficit. They were just not able to close out that win. And Milwaukee looking to steal one on the road and get a chance to close the series out at home. Marcus Smart for the Celtics is slated to return for game 6 of that series, which is on Wednesday night. The Heat and the Sixers will be playing from Philadelphia, a 3-1 lead for Philly after they took both games in Miami. They will be looking to shut the door at home. Miami looking to take it back to the American Airlines Arena in Wade County. And Dwayne Wade has kind of been the savior for that Heat team in those first 4 games, has certainly been the leading producer, and I don't think anybody's really that surprised by that. And then the final game of the night will be the Spurs and the Warriors, where the Warriors are heavily favored to end the series there. They won the first 3 games. San Antonio was able to prolong the series by winning game 4 at home. But with their backs against the wall, it would be very tough for them to win a game at Oracle Arena and push this back to a game 6. But those are the 3 games tonight. Should be really exciting, especially that Bucks Celtics game 5, where you know you're going to get another game regardless. It'll be really interesting to see who takes the advantage in that series. But other than that, that is all I have for you today. I'll be back tomorrow talking about more of what's going on or what went on in the playoffs. And I will certainly feature baseball as more of a dominant topic of discussion once the playoffs start winding down. It's just, especially in the first round where there's multiple games every night, it's definitely the primary thing I'm paying attention to at this time of year. But I'll certainly be talking about baseball, obviously, in the summer, and more so as we get into May and as the playoffs kind of start to wind down. Another thing, I know I mentioned that I'd potentially start doing album reviews soon. I definitely teased that a bit sooner than I wanted to start it. I've just been, of course, very busy, as this is my final semester in college. But once I do finish off this semester, I'll probably start doing those a little less than a month from now, probably in mid-May. I'll start putting up those and may start doing lists of some sort. I don't really know, but that is certainly still part of the plan right now. I'm just going to kind of delay that until I'm done with school. But other than that, that is all I have for you today. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Pick and Pop. This has been Peter Marzano. Hope everybody has a good day.